Hello, everybody. I'm Joyanne Haigh. We welcome our viewers and listeners in Barbados and around the world to another edition of Face It and Fix It on CBC TV 8, CBC Barbados Facebook and YouTube, and of course, Q100.7 Radio. Now, what's on my mind today, what I would like to see us face and fix, certainly would be the numbers that we have at Harrison's Point and all of the other areas that we place our COVID-19 positive patients, and we will be discussing that later on in the show as well as some other things. But today we want to also look at vending in Barbados, and joining us will be the president of the Barbados Association of Retailers, Vendors and Entrepreneurs, BARVEN, Mr. Alister Alexander, and we will also be joined by Roving Communications person in that organization, Mr. Robert Maloney. We're also going to look at NCDs. We know we've been talking a lot about COVID-19, and it has really sucked, again, all of the oxygen out of the atmosphere, but we do have some other ailments that we do have to worry about. And to assist us with this discussion is Dr. Bandele Majeks, co-founder and director of Urgent Care Mobile, and his colleague, co-founder and director of Urgent Care Mobile, Dr. Makeba Brooks. We want you to call us 228-5563 on these issues or anything else you might want to talk to us about, or you can send us a WhatsApp on 228-5562, or go on our Facebook page, watch us there, and type in CBC Barbados, and you can leave your comments for the doctors, you leave your comments for the vendors, or again, as I said, you can talk to us about anything that is on your mind that you want to see us face in this country and have fixed. When we come back, we will be speaking to the representatives of BARVEN. Face It and Fix It. My first guest, I'm proud to say, is a friend of mine. His name is Mr. Alister Alexander. He is the president of BARVEN, and he and I, we work closely together from time to time. And this morning we will be discussing vending in this country and the National Vending Bill. Alister, a pleasure to see you as always.
Well, a pleasure to see you too, Joyanne. You know how it is. I'm saying good morning to Barbados, to our nation, and good morning to the world, everyone that is listening. This is a day that God have made, and we are really rejoicing in it. It's a good day for me, for us.
It is
Yes,
indeed.
please.
Before we start about the National Vending Bill, tell us a little bit about BARVEN. For those who are listening and watching that they're not sure what the association is about, just give us a little rough overview of BARVEN and you being its president and for the last couple of years. I know there's a lot of work going on your side in that division, so tell us a little bit about what the organization does.
Well, Joyanne, thank you again for inviting us on the program. The Barbados Association of Retailers, Vendors, and Entrepreneurs was officially formed October the 1st, 2002. We are an association of over 500 registered members who are from a cross section of vending activity. BARVEN is committed to a constitutional and democratic structure that is easily accessible and responsive. Its ultimate aim is to comprehensively represent all vending, taking in members from the vending community directly, while acting as an umbrella organization for other groups within vending and within vending related activities. That is, in a nutshell, what BARVEN is about. We represent vendors. Our motto is finding solutions through consultation as opposed to confrontation.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, please.
Well, and I
Yes,
know
please.
that over the years, having come from a family of vendors myself, my mom, my oldest sister, and we know that it is the backbone of our society, and in particular the backbone of Bridgetown, because vending goes way back. And we see that your organization has been constantly fighting for the rights of vendors. And I'm glad to finally see that a bill was laid in Parliament a couple days ago, the National Vending Bill. And we don't have the minister here, so I know you paid close attention to that bill. And I would want you to share with us some of the things that are in that bill. Why was it laid? I know you were very instrumental in your organization, very instrumental in fighting for this bill to be laid in Parliament and to be passed. What exactly is in the bill?
Well, let me say first of all, before I speak of what is in the bill, let me say that we have been fighting from the inception of the organization. We have had goals and objectives from the beginning. This is an organization that it was not just formed to shout in the wilderness, but to see something positive happen for the vending sector. We understand through the historians that vending is the mother of all economic enfranchisement in Barbados for Black people. We have had this understanding through educators or leading educators such as Sir Hilary Beckles and the Trevor Marshall. Okay, so, and we have had persons, activists like His Excellency David Commissioner, CARICOM representative, ambassador for Barbados, fighting with us from the beginning. Persons who have been long in the struggle. So we have been clear where we were going. As far as vendors in Bridgetown, we know that they talk about Bridgetown, historic Bridgetown. We say we are the living heritage of historic Bridgetown. And it was not correct that such national treasures, I call ourselves, such as my father, through whom I entered this struggle because of his. It was not fair that they should be treated as criminals. No. There are indeed resistors, as was pointed out in Parliament last Tuesday. There are resistors to economic system purposely was designed to exclude the Black population of Barbados. The Honorable Kerry Simmons passionately delivered the bill. We call it a bill. We call it the Vendors Bill of Rights. It's like a Magna Charta. It is like a Magna Charta of rights for the commercial for the commercial rights of the ordinary Barbadian. That is how I see it. That's how BARVEN sees it. And he was very passionate. He made his case like a lawyer. He made his case, and I would say that he very well, he very well. I tell you, you should have been there. I hope that the whole of Barbados get a chance to see that delivery. It is a historic delivery, right? And it indicted the legislative structure of Barbados that was designed, that was purposely designed to keep the majority black population out of commerce. We see that overthrown in the bill. In the bill, the major aspect of the bill is that the vendors for the first time have been actually given rights. Actually being given rights. And also that criminal element that was invented, the Market and Slaughterhouse Act, actually by what was in it, made vendors criminals, felons, just for selling. Most of the times, as a lot of Barbadians may not know, they may not be aware through BARVEN, there was a policy of past administrations not to give street vendors licenses. Yet they would get on like if we just could walk in and get licenses, and we were well boys and well girls that did not want to comply with the law. They were not giving up licenses to the vendors. Well, again, through the struggle of BARVEN, we overturned that. And we have to thank such persons, I must say. I always say that this is not a political statement, but a social fact and a historic fact. We have to thank the Honorable Mayor Motley for her part that she played from the beginning, helping us even in getting licenses and all of that, and overturning centuries, right, of oppressive laws that were against us.
But let me ask you something, Alister, because we talk about vendors and their rights, and I think it's a great day for vendors, because we know we're going to obviously talk a little bit later about the new shops and the rules and everything that will be coming. But when we talk about the rights of vendors, we also have to look at the other side of this coin. We do have complaints daily of people talk about vendors not maybe behaving in the way that they should, not all, but we have those difficulties too. So in order to bring order and structure, it also works both ways. Because even though we want to make sure that they have rights, vendors have to understand too that when they do get an opportunity to sell, that there are some rules and regulations that they must comply on. Would you want to expand a little bit about that?
Agreed, right? Well, BARVEN says that rights without responsibility is just wrong. Just wrong. And that it is impossible to have development without order. You must have order in order for there to be development. That is a given, right? Now we are saying clearly, we have from the beginning, we have said that there must be. We do not want. Let me say no to the nation. We do not want people to feel that when the bill comes, you're going to have, when the bill is concluded, you're going to have a situation where vendors will not be approached by police. We do not want to give the impression that people can come willy-nilly and how they feel like and just vent, and that their behavior can be as they please. No, the bill also speaks not only to rights but responsibilities. It is headed that way, right? To responsibility of vendors, and we strongly believe, BARVEN strongly believes in policing ourselves. I get some pushback from my own vending community because BARVEN does not play. If we see disorder, we move however we can to correct it. We say everything, it is that finding solutions through consultation as opposed to confrontation. But when it is necessary, we will do whatever we have to bring back order or to keep things structured. And we are working hard. We are working with all the different stakeholders to eradicate all the bad behavior within the vending community.
And I think that this bill then would be a step in the right direction because it's the first time in, well, it's the first time something like this is happening for vendors, basically.
It is.
But on
It
the other
is.
thing too, I want to mention a couple of weeks ago, actually a couple of days ago rather, we saw an article about persons subletting and not being treated fairly. Now, to those of you who may not know, that has been going on from the time Adam was a lad, truthfully. And it's not right to do. But I'm glad it came to the public in the way it did, because it allowed now for changes to be made in regards to not following the lease agreements, and which will bring me in now to the fact that there are lease agreements that vendors must follow. So we don't want the
Yes.
bill again to be seen as if, yes, it's a victory for vendors, but vendors can't do as they like, basically, when it
No.
comes to the lease
No.
agreement.
We no. Thank you. As I said, we will defend vendors' opportunity, vendors' right. We will advocate for those things, but we will never advocate for those things which are wrong. Life is very simple for me. I live my life simple. I believe in right and wrong, and we cannot. We are Marvin is very, and I can repeat, very anti-corruption. We do not deal with any type of corruption, and there are elements within Barbados, within the nations of the world, that bend towards corruption.
Mhm.
When the organization has been speaking out against such things long time ago, long time, and was pushing to see the system clean up, and we welcome we do welcome the publicity that came concerning this corruption, and we are welcoming government's move to root it out, and we want to see that. We do not want to see vendors, for instance, say we have, the new Fairchild Street Market is on stream, right? The village market it is on its way. Praise the Lord. We do not want to see a situation where people come in through back doors and all of that kind of stuff. Those things are not acceptable to our. All of those things happened in the past. But we are saying that right is right and wrong is
No,
wrong.
wrong is wrong. Yeah, I totally agree with you. What we want to discuss, though, is about the markets as well as other parts of Bridgetown that we know will be getting a facelift. So when we come back, we're going to discuss that. And of course, I want to add my voice that it is unconscionable to be charging people those types of rents when you know that it was only $40 and to be charging people $600. But when we come back, we will speak more to Barvin about the market village and all of the other vending around the country. We'll be back. We are still trying to connect with Mr. Robert Maloney, and we're having some challenges, or he rather, with his device, but hopefully he will be able to join us. So, Alister, let's break this down now and get down to some serious vending now in this country.
Yes, please.
We know that we have the market village coming on stream. I've seen it, you've seen it. BARVEN has weighed in on the design. Now, we know that everybody don't always agree, even some of your members. But like everything else, like a union, you have a representative. BARVEN is very similar to a union. And even though you are not a member, some persons may not be members, BARVEN is still willing to represent even the non-members. But I want to talk about town first, and then I'm going to go out of town. Because I think people feel that BARVEN membership is only for town people, but that is not the case.
Yes.
BARVEN membership is for any vendor around Barbados.
Yes,
But,
yes, please.
but I want to talk about vending and the way how the city is being kept. Now, it is not the fault of vendors, but I think moving into the market village, what we used to see before, and I'm speaking to the individuals now that shop and go and buy from vendors, the littering, the urinating, the releasing of feces, etc., in the markets that we would see over the years. These are things that I believe, and you and I have spoken, that we need to stop this practice, because I have seen the markets, as you said, they're about to open, and they're beautiful, colorful, clean. You would want to go down there and eat. But I want you to help me stress on the importance of keeping the market clean, not just the vendors that are moving in, but the customers coming in.
Well, we say BARVEN puts Barbados first. And that phrase came from Valentino Barrow, PRO of BARVEN. I really wanted him to be on today, but due to unforeseen circumstances, he is not able to make it. But we put Barbados first. Whatever we do, we put our nation first. And practices that are negative, that are not positive, that will not help the development of our country, we want to see eradicated and gone. Bridgetown City is our city, and we have to treat it as such. We have to start having the approach that it has to be so. No. If we believe that if we all collectively play our role, that we can tackle any problem, and we can get a positive solution. So we're going to be stressing, and we know that the vendors will comply with all the necessary regulations, and it's necessary to keep their surroundings and their market clean. We are sure about that. We are looking forward to maybe some seminars and such like to help us to get to a next level, because we're talking about development. Something may start undeveloped, but what wrong with we? We can't do like the rest and develop it and get to the next level and the next level. That is what we are about. BARVEN is only about. I tell people all the time. Some people say don't listen. You know why don't listen to? Anything that carrying us back. If you're carrying us back, do not speak to BARVEN. If you're going forward, we want to hear. We will therefore partner with all the necessary agencies, not only to see the new market village progress and be as it should be, but the whole of Bridgetown. Right? We have you may be aware, we have or I don't know if you're aware, but we have an initiative on its way that we call it Enhanced Heritage Business Accommodation. That is enhancing the whole vending operation in town. And therefore, soon it will be a thing of the past where you see all these old trays and old drums, and this type of apparatus used for vending.
And crates and all kind of things stack up.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That there will soon be a time of a thing of the past.
Mm-hmm.
We are ready. We are already in partnership with the Ministry of Commerce concerning that matter. It is rolling out. We have a committee that comprises the Chamber of Commerce, police, and other agencies, government agencies, to see this happen. We had a competition that involved the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic and Institute and BCC to design some innovative and wonderful vending units for Bridgetown City, and we are being backed by the Credit Union of Barbados. It is wonderful. This is a great and exciting time.
Mm-hmm.
Great and exciting time.
Well, it is indeed. And I will add to that the Market Village, from what I understand, over the next few days will be a gradual opening as we continue and persons continue to move. There's going to be another phase of the market, because phase one, from what I understand, is completed, and vendors, the food and beverage vendors, will be moving in there shortly, to be followed by the construction of phase two. That will then be home to, or should I say, a business home to the fruit and vegetable vendors. And then, of course, you have your butchers, and you have your barbers, you have your hairdressers. I know that there's a space for entertainment. I know that there's some talks about having specific nights, like movie night, a special night for certain things. So Bridgetown now in the Market Village will now become another Oystins, or should I say a better version of Oystins, coming. But I also want to mention too, we've got a lot of illegal structures going up in Bridgetown that they're trying to clean up. And this bill will help persons or appoint persons and encourage persons to regularize. Don't just come and pellet 2 pieces of paling and set up a shop. Do the right thing as I'm sure BARVEN would want. But as it leads me into the direction of the Constitution River, and there are about 103 structures in that area. That is another area I believe that is going to be looked at, where vendors will be allowed to have an upgrade in that area. So there's a lot of action happening in Bridgetown, from the Market Village to the Constitution River. The Golden Square Freedom Park will be open, and I understand that there may be a few little shops along that, not a lot, but a few shops along by the Moravian Church. Coming all the way down now to Cheapside, I want you to talk to me about Cheapside. We've had some challenges with Cheapside, and which people then, had some issues of moving. That created then the structures in the Mighty Griner Highway. I want you to take me back a little bit with the Cheapside and the history of Cheapside. Where are we with Cheapside, and where should we go with Cheapside?
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Let us start with a policy. Mm-hmm. BARVEN has advocated from its inception to having a vending policy in Barbados, a national vending policy that we will systematically go about developing vending. We have a comprehensive plan. Remember what I'm saying. A comprehensive plan for Bridgetown. It's not somebody just doing something. No, it is like a business plan for vending in Bridgetown. Okay, so when you spoke about the river, Constitution River, those in the Van Stand, we already have spoken to government concerning all of that. Those persons are supposed to be. It will be phase 2 when the Fairchild Street Village Market is completed. Market Village is completed. The plan was to move towards the river, and we would have that would be an extension of the village. We are speaking. We have Palmetto Mall. We have Marhill Street Mall. We have Central Vending in Bridgetown. Then we have the street vendors in Bridgetown, which we be very clear about. They will not block the streets, but they will be always a representative group of street vendors in Barbados. And that's going to come on the proper, not only we spoke about the aesthetics that will soon be developed. We also speaking about regulated vending as far as the street vendors are concerned in this comprehensive plan. We are talking also now about let me think. I come
go ahead.
Side, right? Because it has to be within the understanding of a comprehensive plan. So we have central markets. Cheapside is another one of the central markets. There are a lot of things that have gone wrong with Cheapside. We said from the beginning that it was constructed wrong, and we had predicted the problems that it would have. All came to pass. We asked government for an outdoor market. We those of us who knew that, because at one stage a lot of people don't even understand the history of these things. Every vendor in town was supposed to be forced into Cheapside Market when the association was formed 2002.
Wow.
And it was impossible for them to hold. We fought for and advocated for an outdoor market. It was said that if we have an outdoor market, we would impact upon Cheapside. It was true. And when we were offered, a group of us, when we were offered accommodations outside of Bridgetown, we decided, we will take that opportunity. We know that we are pioneering. We know vendors do pioneering things. And we were about doing that. So let me be very clear, so that these central markets could also live. Okay? So we have a situation where there are some vendors who would like to occupy what was a temporary market. It is not their fault that it was temporary for probably over a decade, right? But it was temporary. And in order for us to have a comprehensive fix, this is fix it, right?
Face it and fix it. Yes, it is.
Face it and fix it, right? It was impossible for us to fix the whole vending situation in the city and have the outdoor market remain in the city. So we are outside of the city, and we are clear about our objective, where we are going, where we are about. If Vietnam can't hold all the vendors of Barbados, is impossible. Okay, so the development of vending has to happen outside. As far as numbers are concerned, has to happen outside of the city. Okay, so we have.
But also, should we look to still though reconstruct somewhat or redevelop Cheapside? I mean, to sort of tear it down, build it back.
We have to.
Okay. We have to do it.
I am in constant dialogue with the manager of markets and others within the what do you call it? The market, what we call their agency, Joyanne? Markets division. Yes, I am in close dialogue with them all the time, because we are about facing it. You have to face it first.
You do have to face it.
To get to solutions, people want nice things that are messy. As long as you're dealing with human beings and you are serious about,
and they don't want any inconvenience either. But you have to
you are serious about, of course. You're serious about the development of people and taking care of people. You have to face it. If it is your own household, Jaya, you have to face it and do what is necessary to fix it. Cheapside needs a lot of fixing. We produce documents concerning these matters, And we have today, when I was looking through some of my documents, I saw that we had a document about the reconstruction, right,
That's well a while back
the
now.
BARVEN. Yeah, there's a way
But
back. You're quite right.
Alistair,
Reconstruct-
apparently we do have Robert Maloney. Finally, he may not
Very.
have him live, but we will take a break first, and then we're going to come back
Thank
because
you.
we finally got connected with Robert Maloney. We'll be back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are speaking with the president of BARVEN. Unfortunately, we had some little technical problems, so we will be getting him back. We do have Mr. Robert Maloney, the public relations roving communications officer with us. And I would like to sort of highlight a few things that we discussed in a few seconds as we're facing things and fixing things. We know that Alister has mentioned that we have faced the markets behind the Fairchild Street bus terminal. That has now been fixed. Phase 1, phase 2 will be coming in 3. They're facing the problems in the river terminal, about 102 stalls that need to be basically removed and rebuilt. They're talked about the Cheapside market and the solutions for that side of Bridgetown. But I want to ask Mr. Maloney, welcome. Are you there with us?
Yes, I am. Pleasant good morning.
Pleasant good morning to you, Robert Maloney. Thanks for joining us. We had some discussions about various parts of Bridgetown and Vending, and because your title sort of includes the word roving communications, I wonder, what can you tell us about the vending in Swan Street when it comes to vending in doorways of other stores, and what role do you play in terms of communicating with the vendors when they set up shop in front of some of the retailers
Yes,
in town?
once again, pleasant good morning to you, pleasant good morning to Barbados, and pleasant good morning to our listeners. As I would like to highlight is that BARVEN is a revolutionary organization. Our motto is finding solutions through consultation as opposed to confrontation. So therefore, one of the key components that anyone that wishes to take up the role or the mantle of leadership must have is vision. When we speak of the development of vending, we like to think of it not just in its fragments, but BARVEN is tackling it in its totality, where we like to deal with it more comprehensive and more holistic, not just at the individual level, the organizational level, but we are now tackling the vending community and the matters and the situations surrounding the vending community at the national level. Therefore, we would know that it is not just the vendors that would then have our concern, but we would also be concerned with all other players and all other stakeholders that are included and that can be affected. One that you have mentioned is the store owners. So in BARVEN's comprehensive plan, the EHBA, Enhanced Heritage Business Accommodation, we speak of the allotment of equal and what we would like to say reasonable accommodation of vending within the Bridgetown area. As the President rightly identified, all vending reasonably cannot be accommodated in Bridgetown. So if we are looking for the real development of vending, as the President alluded to, we have to look outside of Bridgetown. But we would be aware of the fundamental fact and history that street vending has been one of the means of commerce that have been existed even post and pre-slave time and period. So the vending and the street vendors are not newcomers to the arena, but are actually the forerunners. But due to undemanding situations and stress that had been put on the vending community, then it have developed what we say in an informal setting more than a formal setting, a disorderly setting rather than an orderly setting. So it is BARVEN's goals and objectives that the vending can be accommodated, but it has to be accommodated in an orderly manner. So therefore, we would not be encouraging the disrespecting of any businesses in Bridgetown, any persons in Bridgetown, and for sure any of the store owners. What we look to seek is a harmonious relationship, and rather than a competing of, it is more of a complementing. As we know, when you're thinking of development, you cannot think one-sided. You have to think holistic. You have to think comprehensive. So therefore, the vendors have their place in Bridgetown, especially in the new historic Bridgetown, as well as the store owners have their place. So BARVEN model and goal and philosophy have been always looking to strike a balance in whatsoever it is that we do in order for us to move forward with no one really being inconvenienced. And if there's any inconvenience, let it be as minimum as possible. So the vending community, we are aware of our pros, our positives, as well as our negatives. So therefore, in the near future, BARVEN have partnered with the Ministry of Small Business and Commerce, Honorable Minister Carrie Simmons, the Barbados Chamber of Commerce. We have partnered with the Credit Union Movement of Barbados, the Samuel Jackman Polytechnic students, along with the Barbados Community College students and the officials of those institutes, where we have started an initiative of the Enhancing Heritage Business Accommodation, where we have been given the assistance from the said Ministry of Commerce, where we have carried out a questionnaire, a survey on all the vendors that are on Swan Street, their locations, and the streets also adjacent. With this initiative, we are looking now to strategically place vendors as reasonably as can be accommodated with some of the best chaoses that had been conceptualized by the students of those two institutes, to give it a more aesthetic look to the community, make it become more formal part of the community and the Bridgetown area, where they would not just be jumbling up and looking a little disorderly in front of people's businesses, but we would have them that they would add to the charm of Bridgetown. They would add to the heritage, as we also consider ourselves to be national heritage and the living heritage of historic Bridgetown, which would make us cultural heritage. So if that aspect, the best aspect of the vending community, can be woven into the society that already exists within Barbados, rather than we seeing it being a competition, we see it as a complementation, that the vending community have quite a bit to add. We draw persons into the city, we bring life to the city, we bring spirit to the city. So there's quite a few things that the vending community can contribute to the city, especially on Swan Street, are not just viewed in the negative light in the sense that we are blocking the stores. Again, that can be happening due to the influx of persons that have came into the vending community due to the many challenges that our country has been faced with. And we can date it back as far as the recession in 2007. Then there was the retrenchment that was in 2008, 2009. And here now again we are faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, where the retail sector and the job sector have been severely affected. So many persons, including tourism, where many persons will have plied their trade and were seeking to make a living for themselves. So under now the impact and this added strain that have been put on the economic landscape of Barbados, many persons now have to ply their trade in the vending community. So we would see now an influx of vendors coming on the street, not just the Swan Street area.
But let me ask you this, Robert, and welcome back, Alister, because he's connected again with us. How easy is it if I want to permit? Now, you know that there are people, what we call pop-up shops, that just pop up. You know, you didn't see them there for years. They will just come out and just set up a tray or set up something. Who regularizes that? In other words, who says, okay, I want to have a conversation with you so that we don't have the police jumping in right away? What is the protocol? How do you apply for a permit first? And if you see someone popping up, who reports that person and what is the procedure?
Yes, well, in any area, the person that has that responsibility would be the Ministry of Agriculture, who is responsible for the dissemination of the permits. But again, we would know due to those circumstances, and we're looking at people's livelihoods. If there are mass of people that came into the vending community, I don't know if it would have been humanly possible for the Ministry of Agriculture to have been able to answer all of those calls for help in the systematic manner where persons might have to acquire the necessary documentation. Again, we know that while the grass would be growing, the horses would be starving. But under such circumstances, again, we say it was a tidal wave of vendors that have come into the vending community seeking to provide a living for themselves and along with their families. So we give thanks for the overstand. Yes.
Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but remember that we saw this coming.
Yes, we did.
And we appealed to the previous administration to let us deal with this in a systematic way, that let us have a plan. And it was not heeded. We were told, oh, all right, as usual, but we were not heeded. And we know that it would have been necessary to, if we had done it properly, we would not have a chaotic influx, but not chaotic. Okay, because it's necessary. The licenses are necessary to control the amount of persons that in the city. As I said, yes, you know, some people get the impression the city is a small place. So we get the impression that Bridgetown is a large city.
It is a small place, Alister, and we got about 1 minute, 30 seconds, and I want you to tell me quickly if it is. I'm going to invite you back again because, you know, we need to continue the discussion, but the vendors outside of the city, I'm seeing people popping up on the highway. My fear is that a car runs off the road, a vendor gets injured. What can we do? What are we doing to manage that? We don't want to take away people's ability to make money, but you want them to do it in a safe manner.
Yes, Alister.
We
really try. Go ahead, Robert. Go ahead.
Yes, the Bill 2021, the National Vending Bill for Vending Bill 2021 addresses all of those concerns actually in a holistic and a comprehensive manner, where we have taken all of those considerations into thought and have looked to see the best way in which we can move forward, where there would be licenses mechanism in place. We are also seeking to make some lay-bys and the development of vending communities, not only within the Bridgetown area. We're also looking to occupy the Spikestown area, as we know that is very historic when it comes to the vending movement, and the oisting. So wherever you go just now in Bridgetown, you would see the development of vending. Again, not just on a little small scale, but on a national scale. We see the Minister of Fisheries, Blue Economy, Mr. Kurt Humphrey, has also embarked on this initiative. I see a couple more ministers in charge of the children is also looking at this avenue as the way forward to empower our children and empower the future.
Well,
Yes,
Robert,
let me say concretely
Maloney.
that
Well, okay,
that
Alister, you're gonna
sorry,
30 seconds.
quick. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna take a break and we're gonna come right back when we wrap up with Barvin. We'll be back.
Yes, please.
Okay.
for how government has moved, this administration has moved to uplift the vendors and Fairchild Street in particular, as we're speaking of, and within with the development concept that BARVEN has been pushing. Nice development concept, not these things where you just try to build something to corral people, to, as Majeks would say, to juke them in, right? But a nice place like the Fairchild Street Market Village. We would say to them that look at yourselves, and I don't that they do look at themselves as business people, that they have. I would want them to have a business plan beyond the concrete, the wood, and the mortar. We we're talking about having a business plan for the market that it be a success. We're talking about a business approach to that market. I'm looking forward to seeing we have a stage where the culture of the island can be incorporated into that market. We have a screen and thing,
Yeah.
the nice things,
It's going to be exciting, and I want you and Robert to come back, as well as Valentino. Good morning to you, Valentino. I'm so sorry wherever you are that you couldn't make it with us,
Yes.
PRO of BARVEN. I want to say a special good morning and shout out to all of the vendors in Barbados. And if you have not joined BARVEN yet, I suggest that you do that. A special good morning to my people and friends of Ellis Village and the Marl Hole and Tweeside Road, and in Wellington Street, Nelson Street, Orleans, all of the people in town, but in particular, a special good morning to the vendors, respect due to you. And I encourage you to join BARVEN, because together you are more powerful and you can get things done. I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us, but I'm bringing you back here, Alister. I'm bringing you back because we have not finished the conversation yet. Thank you so much. And thank you, Robert Maloney. Robert, we're going to give you some more time too. And hopefully by then we'll be joined with Valentino. I always like to hear the PRO. He's always got a lot to say. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll see you again soon. Thank you. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. Our next guests are the directors and founders of Urgent Care Mobile, that medical facility that we've been all hearing about all over Barbados. We want to welcome Dr. Bandele Majeks and Dr. Makeba Brooks. Welcome to Face It and Fix It. And they are here not to talk about COVID-19 that is sucking all the oxygen out of the atmosphere, but they're going to talk about the NCDs and things that are happening around COVID-19 to patients that are suffering from diabetes or kidney problems, etc. I want to welcome Dr. Makeba Brooks and Dr. Bandele. We call you Dr. Bandele, so I will keep it at that. How are you this morning?
Morning, Joanne.
Thank you very much
to our
for having
listeners.
us.
Great. Makeba is Dr. Brooks. I'm sorry, I do know these individuals, so from time to time the first name will slip out. So Dr. Brooks, I'll start with you. We have a lot of challenges on this island with NCDs. We know that the hospital right now is pretty overrun, and if we're not careful, it may even shut down. And I don't mean to say that in terms of making people fearful, but to the sense where we are so consumed by COVID, we may not always remember the other patients. And I want you to give us an idea about what are some of those ailments that we should be worried about outside of COVID.
Yeah, certainly, most definitely. So NCDs, as they're called, are non-communicable diseases. These are diseases that can't be transmitted to a person. Most notably, when people speak about NCDs, they're speaking about cardiovascular diseases like heart attacks, and strokes, cancers, diabetes, and chronic respiratory diseases. And when you lump these together, actually, so if we go pre-COVID, NCDs are the leading causes of death and disability globally. This is all over the world, not just here on our little rock, but all over the world. And they affect more people each year than all other causes of death and disability combined. See if that you can just let that sink in, Joyanne, if you understand the mass scale that we're talking about. And so with rising populations, aging populations, rising in what we call multimorbidity, so people having more than one disease process going on at the same time, longer life expectancies, and increasing survival rates for whatever diseases persons may have. More and more persons are expected to live longer and longer, and therefore we expect more and more persons to be living with the health burdens of non-communicable diseases.
Wow. So what can we do? We talk about educating people and to minimize that and to lower those numbers, but we're there already. It's quite high. So what do? We continue our education. Hospital is overwhelmed. People don't know where to go, what to do. What can we do to start that conversation? Is it communication, ads? What is it?
So it's not just, I wouldn't say starting, but continuing. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, they did a survey of maybe about 145 countries or so, asking them about what their NCDs and NCD programs has been since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And more than 2/3 of the nations surveyed reported that they had disruptions of their NCD diagnosis and treatment. And over half of the countries actually said that there's been also delays in cancer diagnosis and treatment specifically. So this again is major. Here in Barbados, anecdotally, we saw a significant decrease last year when we had our first lockdowns. There was a significant decrease in hospital admissions for cardiovascular events. Now, this doesn't mean that less people were having strokes and heart attacks. It just meant that people were staying away from hospital, but they still had these events, which of course is going to cause long-term repercussions for those individuals and for us as an entire nation, because the less people we have out of the workforce for premature heart disease is a significant effect then on our economy also.
Okay, Dr. Bandele, as the head of urgent care, co-founder of urgent care, when you receive calls, are you getting more COVID-19 calls for urgent care, or are you getting more calls about the NCDs? What is it that you're seeing more of?
Well, interestingly, Joanne, I think that we have started recently, as we've had this recent surge, we started to see a sort of uptick in the number of COVID-related causes, or certainly people who are currently concerned that they may have COVID and just want to get tested to make sure that nothing is actually, that they don't have COVID, essentially. What we have noticed throughout the pandemic, especially this year, is that we've been still seeing quite a few people making calls for conditions that are related to chronic disease. And as my colleague, Dr. Brooks just mentioned, there has been somewhat of a fall off in people paying attention to their chronic diseases. So things like hypertension, diabetes, they go unattended. People are no longer going to their family physicians as regularly as they were before. Their rate of time, and we're seeing, higher incidence somewhat from our calls of things like hypertension, related diseases like heart attacks, strokes, and I also take that a little bit further. Some of the things that we've actually started to see going unnoticed also is some of the screening that we may look for with some of these comorbidities and cancers.
But this is a little scary though, because if it is that my mom goes to a hospital and all these different people are asking for assistance, but then COVID is kind of taking over that, we can actually lose more people from other diseases than we would from actual COVID itself. Now, I do want to ask a question, and I know it's not related to what I just said, but before I forget, when you are in a line about to get a vaccine for COVID, and you're not sure what your underlying issue is, it could be anything, but you could be in a line and you have COVID and you don't know. Is there harm in taking that vaccine without getting a test? Why I ask this, we've been told in order to either give blood or even to get a vaccine and you have COVID, you should give it a little time before you take the vaccine. But if I am in a line and I don't know I have COVID or not, there's no testing for me, standing up in that line, I'm going to get my little jab. Is it that the vaccine, according to the Beijing, it ain't tech? Or, so I really want that, because people have asked that, and I really would like, if you doctors, I know, I promise not too much on COVID, but it is related to not breakthroughs possibly of COVID with the vaccine.
That's an excellent question, Joanne. And to be honest, when you started at the beginning, when you mentioned, we're not really here to talk about COVID, I think the reality is it's impossible not to talk about COVID at this point in time. I think it's important to have somewhere in the background the role that chronic diseases play and how they impact a COVID diagnosis, or how COVID diagnosis impacts those. To answer the question specifically, know that you should proceed to get your vaccine without being tested. I think there's been a lot of data at this point in time that shows that there's no contraindication to getting the vaccine in those circumstances. So you can go ahead and get the vaccine regardless of what you think your status might be. But having said that, if you are known to have COVID-19, the recommendation is that you wait until you're no longer symptomatic of that disease before getting the vaccine. So chances are, if you're standing in the line and you don't know that you have COVID, you're really not going to be symptomatic. So there's no contraindication in that scenario to taking the vaccine.
Okay.
And as for all vaccines, essentially what we always say is if you're feeling unwell, you feel you may have an illness, a viral illness in particular, you shouldn't get vaccinated until those symptoms abate.
Correct.
Well, I want to narrow it down a little bit now, the conversation to kidney patients right now in this country on dialysis, etc. And how important is it for them to be seen on a regular basis, whether it be QEH or privately? Because I've had some complaints of concerns that persons' appointments have been put off because of the COVID-19 issues, because of the fears in the healthcare system, and sometimes because there may be not enough machines that day. Are kidney patients more at risk than any patient with a heart defect or diabetes? Because I'm hearing that they are, but I'm not quite sure, so I just wanted to find out for the individual that asked. Are kidney patients more at risk of dying from COVID-19 more so than the other NCDs?
We can actually put it down to a specific condition, but we do know that people with underlying health conditions like non-communicable diseases have higher risk of severe COVID-19 disease and are more likely to die from COVID-19. And people who recover from COVID-19 are also more likely to develop long-term chronic conditions, of which may include diabetes, may include hypertension, cardiac diseases, including valvular conditions, etc. And so for that reason, that's why there's such a push globally to make sure that there's continuity of the non-communicable diseases services to ensure that those persons get that continuity of care that they need even during the COVID-19 pandemic. They're actually now referring to NCDs and COVID-19 as a syndemic, a synergistic pandemic of sorts, because NCDs affect COVID-19 and COVID-19 affects NCDs. And so therefore one plays into the other and the other plays right back into the first. And, just to remember that many of the 4.5 million lives that have already been lost due to COVID-19 were people living with underlying health conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart failure, and obesity. And these are, for the most part, things that we can actually prevent.
So what are some of the numbers that we are seeing? We said that 4.5 people obviously have passed. What are some of the types of ailments, rather, that you've seen when we say, I can't take a vaccine because of illness A, B, or C? What would some of those ailments be for persons who really cannot take a vaccine? Is there a list? Thrombosis, persons prone to blood clotting? Because people are skeptical of getting the vaccine when they're in that position.
Right. So as with anything, really, communication is paramount. So you have a relationship with your physician. These are things that you and your physician should discuss, just like anything. So any other vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine is not unlike any other vaccine that we've had. So let's say you're taking your child for measles, mumps, and rubella. There are some conditions that your doctor would say your specific child perhaps should not get that vaccine or should not get that vaccine in the way it's normally administered. And so conversations with your physicians are important, and there's no list specifically to you in relation to you. You should, or maybe you should not. Maybe you should wait a while, and they will have that discussion with you. It is a collaboration between the patient and their physician, and they will come up with the best decision for the individual. What we do in medicine often is we weigh risks versus benefits, and we do this with all sorts of things, all sorts of even medications. So I might say an aspirin pill it's a baby aspirin, how much harm can it do? And I give this to everybody who, let's say, has had a heart attack or is over the age of 60, and I think they're at risk of high risk of cardiovascular disease, and I give you a baby aspirin to take every day. But there's some people who shouldn't take aspirin. And,
Well, I mean, I know we're going to talk about NCDs, and we still got to touch on COVID a little bit. And I'm sorry to say this, but the numbers are quite high. We are over 500. Back came and they said for a sharp lockdown, short and sharp. What is your position on the situation right now, both of you, as the directors of urgent care, what you're seeing, and you had a chance to make a suggestion as to how we can better manage the numbers, and then you can answer about managing the NCDs afterwards. But how can we manage the numbers? Right now, we are at 501 isolated.
I think that, John, that's a very tricky question to answer, certainly. And I don't envy those that have to make this very hard decision as to how do we manage the situation currently in Barbados. We always balancing economy versus the overall health of our nation, and certainly the two go hand in hand. So as we start thinking about lockdowns and essentially restricting access to people to make a dollar, that's going to have an economic impact on them, and that will certainly have an impact on their overall health. I think that without sounding politically affiliated, that the balance that we're trying to strike at this point in time, I believe, is a reasonable approach. At this point in time, I say our focus must be on trying to get everyone vaccinated. COVID is not going anywhere anytime soon, unfortunately. We can always look at at lockdowns and various restrictive measures. But what we know for sure works is vaccination. It decreases the risk of significant mortality and morbidity, as well as making sure that we follow the protocols that have been highlighted. And we can't say them enough. I'm sure I don't even need to repeat them in this forum, but that is what we really need to do at this point in time. And I would let the Ministry of Health and certainly our leaders of this nation comment more on those decisions as it relates to lockdown procedures.
Okay. Well, we are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to ask the doctors about how do you self-diagnose on your way to a hospital that you're told, call us first, just don't show up, but the person's feeling that they may be having a heart attack, etc. So I want to talk about some of those signs and what to do when we come back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We're speaking with Dr. Bandele and Dr. Brooks, the directors and co-founders of Urgent Care. Doctors, I want to ask a simple question. The hospital, as we know, we don't want COVID in our hospital, but we have been told, or advised rather, to call ahead if you can. And basically, if you're not well, come, yes, but know when to go to the accident and emergency, especially in a time like COVID. For example, you stump a toe, you run to the A&E. You have to wait 20 hours. So if someone is calling urgent care, for example, what is the first thing that they do? Did they just say we'll be right there, or do you have a moment to take a checklist? What exactly is wrong? Do you keep that person on the line until a doctor comes? Things like that.
Okay, so Joanne, we do telephone triage, a very brief telephone triage to find out exactly what the problem is that the person may be having. And the most important reason for doing this is to see whether or not this is something that somebody should be waiting for somebody to come to deal with them at home, or whether this is a condition that they should report to accident emergency immediately for. So we would ask persons, if you're having difficulty breathing, or you're having chest pain, just kind of try to get an idea of whether or not this is an urgent condition or an emergent condition. And the difference is significant. And obviously, we're not going to advise somebody to wait at home while a doctor comes to you and fights traffic to get there, when it is something that could lead to loss of limb or life for that week.
So you can easily recognize that with a call. Let's just say they call urgent care. You're able to say, look, don't wait on us. You need to get you can get to the hospital faster. There's some questions coming in. We will share obviously with you, because people are back to the NCDs and why it is that COVID loves NCDs so much. Because we heard that, the most vulnerable. But we also know that there are people who pass on. And when we hear there was no NCD, there was nothing. So the question, and I believe you kind of answered it, but to go over it again for those, it was why are NCDs and COVID such, they love each other so much?
That's a great question. And just to touch, Joanne, on what you just mentioned, you said, we hear of people passing and there's no history of NCDs. I think it's important to recognize that there's no history of NCDs. That does not mean that they didn't have NCDs And unfortunately, I think it's very important to mention this, is if you haven't gone to the doctor in the last 5 or 10 years, you have no idea what NCDs you have. That's why it's very important that we do our screening on a regular basis. That you do have an established family practitioner, and you go and get checked for diabetes, you get checked for various cancers, you get checked for hypertension, and you do that regularly so you know exactly where you stand. Now, why NCDs and why are they more prone? Quite simply, it's all about your immune system and your ability to sort of fend off or fight off infection. And as we know, COVID-19 is an infection, and people with chronic non-communicable diseases, their immune system is not as robust as someone who's younger, who doesn't have any of these ailments. So you find that the elderly and those with chronic diseases are more at risk.
Wow, okay. So how do you feel about, and I asked this question last week to Dr. Brian Charles, I felt that we want to increase the vaccinations, but we're not giving the vaccines to doctors to administer to help out with their own patients. Is that something that you see should be done without interfering with the ministry, but you are doctors and you have patients? So shouldn't we not see the vaccines being shared amongst the private doctors to administer, maybe minus Pfizer because of the storage issues? But certainly AstraZeneca and Sinopharm can urgent care not assist in that regard if they put that out there to the ministry.
Well, what I would say, what I would say, Joyanne, is though in terms of assisting the ministry, that it sounds theoretically like it would be a good idea and it could work. I think perhaps, and of course I don't know the thinking behind those in charge of the Ministry of Health, but what having all of the vaccines held by the ministry does is make sure that everybody in Barbados, no matter class or creed, you all have access to the vaccines equally. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what is vitally important, that we don't have a disparity where some people can access the vaccines and other people cannot. And so by keeping it all under the Ministry of Health and them being in charge of the dispensation of the vaccines, we create that. And we don't have the issues that some other countries may have where the haves can get the vaccines and the have-nots cannot.
Well, we're seeing a backlog, though, in testing, for sure. The ministry came out and said, obviously, because you have an increase in cases. And
Yes.
I'm not, CBC, I'm not giving urgent care a plug, but I am a patient of urgent care in terms of a customer. And I've always come to you for getting my test done, because I've had about 3, probably 4 COVID tests prior to the vaccine. How can we get a test now? I understand that there's a mobile, there's a drive-through. Before, you used to send a wonderful young lady, this nurse, and when she went up my nostril, I could not feel anything. And I actually tried to put it on video because people are fearful of the nose swab. But I'll ask you 2 things. Where can we go to get a swabbing done to assist the ministry? Because we know that you can get testing at the gymnasium, and they're trying to open up other sites. But I know those who can afford, that don't want to stand in a line, where can they go? And that's one question. And the second question, can I get a swab in my mouth and not my nose, for those who don't like it? 2 questions.
Okay, so thanks for those 2 questions. I'll first start by saying that we constantly have dialogue with the Ministry of Health, and I think not just urgent care mobile, but physicians in the private healthcare setting in Barbados are always willing to contribute and do whatever is necessary to assist, whether it be testing and perhaps when the time comes when it is vaccination. I think we'll be happy to play our part. They're currently urgent care mobile. We do offer testing. We do have a drive-through facility set up at Sky Mall, and that's just one way of sort of making it comfortable and making it accessible, and hopefully maybe taking a little bit of the pressure off the public testing facilities.
When you say drive-through, literally drive-through, I don't have to get up my car, drive-through.
You don't. That's correct.
Okay.
You don't have to get out your vehicle. You just make a
Good.
booking and you drive through. You get swabbed and you drive off, and you
Before
get your
you answer
results
the
sent to you.
swabbing, someone's trying to get through. A lot of people.
Sure.
Let's take a phone call quickly. Good morning. Face it and fix it. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, good morning to you, Joyanne,
Good morning.
and good morning to your panel. Great show you're having, but you always do great. I think you're a great hostess. I'd like to pose the questions, please. Yeah, I heard the doctor mention that when you haven't visited the doctor for the last 4 or 5 years and so on, you really have no real idea of your status. What I want to find out, one, is there are personnel who set up sometimes in the supermarket and they can test your sugar level, your cholesterol, and so on. I want to know how reliable those tests are. So if I haven't seen my doctor say in the last 2 years, could I say, well, I haven't got any diabetes because I got tested in the supermarket? That's one question. And question two, there's some persons who express some reservation about the quality of the Chinese vaccines. Are those concerns legitimate with the rationale that people, some persons question the quality of Chinese products? I'd like to hear comments on those two questions, please.
Okay.
So I'll take the first question greedily, and I'll leave the second one for my colleague, Dr. Brooks. So to answer your first question, people who don't know about their health status and whether or not, the sort of pop-up testing stations where you get your blood sugar and whatnot done. I actually, I'm a big supporter of initiatives like that. I think it is important to get some information, even if you haven't necessarily gone to your doctor, to get some information as to your health status. But it really is just a snapshot of those two things, of blood sugar, which can be affected by whatever meal you've had for the day or haven't had for the day. And similarly, cholesterol can also be affected by meals. So I think, when you go to those types of testing stations, you tend to be and should be advised that it should be followed up by a more comprehensive assessment by your doctor. Where they check your urine, they actually listen to your heart and lungs. They can, and also one of the things that, I think is very important with a medical is to take a good history of your particular condition, because we know that chronic non-communicable diseases tend to run in families. So it's important to have some information about the history of the health of your family, so we know what risk you have in particular. So I think that you need to do both, to be honest.
Okay. And Dr. Brooks, Sinopharm,
Yes.
potato.
Sinopharm, and the question was, sorry, Joyanne, what's the difference between the Sinopharm and the other ones?
Yeah, and the fact that the vaccine, that people are hesitant. So what are your thoughts
Okay.
on that vaccine in particular?
So the Sinopharm vaccine was manufactured in China. It differs from like the Pfizer in that it's a different type of vaccine. It's an inactivated virus, and there are some other vaccines that we use already in our vaccination programs that are inactivated viruses. And it has the efficacy is around 80% in the studies that have been published. This differs from the Pfizer, and that the Pfizer is about 95% in some studies that have been published. But just a reminder, we are now into a new phase now. We're dealing with the Delta variant, and so some of the efficacies are a bit different. The good thing is that even with the Delta variant, the vaccines that are currently on the market still are shown to be effective at preventing significant disease and usually death.
Okay, so basically, as a
I would
doctor,
interject here.
Go ahead.
I would interject here a little bit, John, just to elaborate on what Dr. Brooks has said, because I think, yes, I know for one that a lot of people are very hesitant about the Sinopharm vaccine, and I've heard a lot of sort of jokes about it, standing in line waiting for a vaccine. The honest truth of this is that the difference between Sinopharm, maybe it's not as internationally accepted, especially if you're considering travel. But it's been shown so far to be highly effective. I mean, any vaccine just needs to be 50% efficacious in order for it to work, and it has been shown to work. So I think that I would recommend to anyone trying to get, looking to get vaccinated, that for all intents and purposes, Sinopharm is essentially as good as the other vaccines. But we do know that Pfizer has been, as far as the data is concerned, Pfizer has had the highest efficacy. But that does not mean that Sinopharm or AstraZeneca, for that matter, don't play a very similar role. And I don't think at the end of the day, the differences are going to be significant enough for you to say, no, I don't want one or the other.
Well, the other good thing in looking at this is that the virus came out of China, that vaccine came out of China, and who would better know how to get us a vaccine than the Chinese? So, no, but that's the other way of looking at it. People looking at it in a negative way.
True.
I'm trying to look at it in a positive way. I bet on the Chinese because this is where it started. But when you mentioned the Pfizer having the highest efficacy, but yet there's discussion on a booster, does that mean that the other vaccines probably will need a booster too as well? Because there's still some discussion on that booster discussion, and it's confusing the world really about do we need a booster or not?
Well, we're
Yeah,
still
I
having
think
those discussions.
right.
Sorry.
That's it. This
You
is
go
all
ahead.
now
Yeah,
evolving.
essentially.
Sorry, Bandele.
Yeah, that's fine.
This is all now evolving. We're getting as information comes in, it's being dispensed, and I think it's very important to just understand that we're still dealing. This is still a very new. It's not a new type of virus because coronaviruses are not new at all. But this particular virus is new, and so as they're trying to develop vaccines, they're getting more and more information. Studies are ongoing as we speak, and more studies are to come as the months go on. And as information is found in studies, the information is brought, but then you have to find out whether or not it's clinically significant and what needs to be done, if anything, about the information that you're garnering as you go through doing these studies.
One other thing I want to ask, and I hope you can answer before the break, but if you don't, then we will come back. Is there any such thing as a person who's immune to COVID? I mean, have you done any studies? No, don't get me wrong. No, I know they said that Hollywood is Hollywood, but you know, there's some real life stuff that happens. I mean, we've seen movies and then we've seen actual things happening now that movies were happened years ago. But is it possible that you have individuals that have been around people and they didn't get it, and anybody is putting a study out there wondering if it is that we have people who are immune to this? Possible?
That's an interesting question again, Joanna. You really picked some good ones.
Sorry.
I think what you're really getting at, the reality is that, are you immune, or is it that your immune system has coped better? And I think that's what we see in asymptomatic individuals, for the most part. People who've been exposed, who may be COVID positive, you'll never know because no one's tested them, and who are asymptomatic. I think that is really what we're seeing, and how COVID may impact the immune system of one person versus the other. And just to harp back again on the fact that people with chronic non-communicable diseases are the ones who are most likely, and the elderly, of course, to have deleterious effects from the COVID-19 and vaccine, who are certainly not, as we put it, immune.
Wow. All right, we'll be back after the break. We'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are speaking with the co-founders of Urgent Care Mobile, Dr. Bandele and Dr. Makeba Brooks. We're getting some messages coming in and people are asking, can they take 2 more vaccines, believe this or not, after they've taken the 2 vaccines? Because people are hearing about the fact that it's waning off a bit and they are trying to see if they can get another vaccine. What advice would you like to give to these individuals that are messaging and asking this question? Anybody want to?
So at the moment, that's not advice. That's not advice. So what I would say, as I said before, really this is an evolving situation. Stay posted. Information will come out which is credible, where we can trust persons like organizations like the WHO, the World Health Organization, PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, CDC, which will be given information that is credible and useful to persons as to how we can all remain safe and healthy. At the moment, that's not a recommendation, but it may be in the future. So we just have to stay posted and see what becomes of this ongoing situation.
So to our viewers and listeners, in particular those in Barbados, do not get into the line if you have been vaccinated already. You'll be wasting your time. Don't do that. We have another question, and this one was a little shocker because we couldn't believe that people can actually manufacture blue cards, but people are actually going for a second vaccine and saying that they want the Pfizer. They don't want the AstraZeneca, but the AstraZeneca was their first vaccine. I understand that some possible alterations may be attempted for some of these cards. But of course, the information in the system obviously would have to show one vaccine. Can we mix? Is it safe to mix vaccines? 1 minute I heard it was, then I heard no. Is it accepted to mix a vaccine? In other words, for first dose AstraZeneca, I changed my mind, I want Pfizer for my second dose. Can we do that?
So the short answer,
no. No,
yeah,
no.
And I hate for us to sound like a broken record, but once again, the current advice is no. The current advice is no. You definitely want to stick to what you've been given, and essentially, once again, you're not pushing one vaccine ahead of the other. If you've been fully vaccinated with one vaccine, you are good to go. There's no need to rush to get Pfizer. Please give those who have not been vaccinated at all a chance. That is your best chance of not getting terminally ill from this illness. If we can get all of Barbados vaccinated with some type of COVID-19 vaccine, that is the direction that we want to go in.
All right,
so what I'll add here, Dr. Bandele, is that though mostly persons do just stick to one vaccine, what we saw happen in the UK is they had paused using the Oxford AstraZeneca and started using Pfizer. And actually, they didn't see many really adverse effects to person who had mixed vaccines. And actually, the initial early evidence that came out of the studies done in the UK were that there seemed at that time to have been increased efficacy. So in other words, taking AstraZeneca alone, you were good. Taking Pfizer alone, you were good. But those who had one AstraZeneca, one Pfizer, seem to have been doing better in terms of their efficacy. But what we must remember is that here we have a limited amount of vaccines there, and Pfizer is the only vaccine now that we can give to our children. So in an attempt we know the Delta variant is around. I don't think I need to explain this, but I might, and if that's necessary, I don't have a problem doing it. So the Delta variant is 60% more transmissible than Alpha variant. The Alpha variant would have been the variant that came out of the UK that we were seeing late last year. And the unvaccinated population and children, including children, is at high risk for infection with the Delta variant. So the best thing that we can do for ourselves and certainly for our children is to make sure that the vaccine is available for those between 12 and 18 years who cannot get the AstraZeneca vaccine, that they're able to access and get all the Pfizer vaccines that we have in Barbados, and that for the rest of our children, we do our part now in vaccinating ourselves so that we at least surround our children with persons who are fully vaccinated, as adults, that is.
A mother reached out to me a few days ago and about her 12-year-old son. Hi, Kyle, if you're watching. Your son actually watches the show. And she's skeptical about the Pfizer vaccine, and she wanted to know, is there any reports of, the little side effects, and is it the same in terms of a little fever, headache? That we're not hearing from the mothers about the children after they've had the Pfizer vaccine. And we know that over 2,000 children, I believe by now or more, would have had the Pfizer vaccine. Do you have any information that you can share with mom if she's listening now, and all of these mothers?
Sure.
What are the children saying? They're complaining, they're crying?
So what I'll tell you, Joyanne, is this is I'm so glad you mentioned that. That the mothers are used to taking their children for vaccines. So this is not a novel idea. This is nothing new. They understand you take the kids for the vaccine. It hurts a little bit when they get the stick. They may complain, they may moan. They may have a fever later the evening. They may feel a little bit cranky. And by the day after, they're over it, if they even have any of those symptoms at all. It's the adults we have to try to get on board with it. But the mothers, I think, or parents, I should say, as a whole, because it's not just mothers that take children for vaccine.
So for sure,
but they get it.
We've had no major issues that we know of someone saying a child had to be hospitalized and all that from just after the vaccine. From Pfizer, I should say. We don't have any information to support that. For sure, by now, this is Barbados. If we had one child that happened to, they would have gone global in a day. So mom, if you're watching, and all the mothers, please, if you can get your children vaccinated with the Pfizer, please do so. Now, I want to turn my attention, because we only have about 8 minutes left, to you, to the doctors, to the nurses, to the people that have to fight this, and they're tired. God knows QEH must be stretched, and all of the other agencies. What can we do when we have people who are asymptomatic? We heard that you don't catch, let me rephrase that. You're not supposed, if you're asymptomatic, it means you don't have symptoms. But then I'm hearing, okay, we got to take this go, but then I'm hearing you can go from 0 to 100 in an hour. So you don't know. So I'm wondering, how do we keep people away from people like you, so that if people like you don't catch this virus? Because if more doctors and nurses get sick from the virus, I mean, even though they're vaccinated, they still have to stay home because they still have to quarantine. My worry is the healthcare system crumbling at a rapid rate, where the people we need now to help us with the NCDs may not be well. We do have a call. Let's take this call. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My son had the vaccine. He is 12 years old. He was the first special needs child to have the vaccine, and he had no pain whatsoever.
Very good. And this is Pfizer?
Yes. What I did when he came home is make sure I gave him 2 paracetamol, just as when he was small and going to get vaccine, I would give him that before the fever come on. That is what I do.
Well, good for you. Good for you. Proud of you. And again, this is Pfizer. My daughter Sky took AstraZeneca when she's 21. And I just drugged her up with some paracetamol too, every 4 to 6 hours, and she was great.
I only had to give him it once.
You only had to give him once?
Yeah, and he told me, good morning. He said, come in, see if your hands swell or anything. And he told me, no. And the boy took his hand and carried all around to show me that it was fine.
Well, I would like him to tell me what he was doing. Not that the vaccine has made my arms stiff. I think frozen shoulder and old age has done that. But thank you so much for sharing that. And that's an inspiration, I think, for mothers who are skeptical. Her child with special needs. And we are worried about our children as parents, but double that with special needs moms. But I want to get back to the way how doctors are feeling. Nurses are overwhelmed, and if they get sick, or if their children get sick under 12, because there's no vaccine, where are we going with this? And I am a little bit concerned, more so about the healthcare system in this country, and it possibly taking a major hit. And in a way where I'm saying, not that you die because you're vaccinated, but you have to remove yourself from tending to patients that have diabetes, cancer, all of the NCDs. Anyone wants to comment on this and where we are and where we could possibly go? And what can we do?
Excellent
Certainly.
point, Joyanne. What I would say is universal precautions have to be universal. We need to remember what we're supposed to do each and every time and not drop our guards. It's a lot easier said than done, but it's vitally important. It's actually a matter of life and death for some of us. And because some of us too, physicians, have conditions where we perhaps cannot take vaccines because physicians also have cancers and non-communicable diseases and other things that we may be battling with health-wise. What I would say is being on an island puts us in a unique and precarious position. We're not like large countries where if you have an outbreak in Washington, you just fly in some nurses from New York and you just bring in some nurses from Philadelphia. It's not that easy for us. And so it is crucially important that our healthcare team, both public and private, remain COVID-free so that we can continue to do the good work that we have to do to keep the rest of Barbadians healthy and safe.
And I wanted to ask about the asymptomatic. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Bandele.
Yeah, no, I would just add to that to say that I think what you really getting at there, Joanne, is what are we doing to protect our healthcare system in Barrow, which is as we know fragile because it's a small country and it's certainly dependent on a very small budget at the end of the day. How do we protect that? We all need to play our part as individuals, and that's the greater public. We all need to get together and say, it's time for us to all get this vaccine. I can't say that enough. Because
time to do it.
Yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it. And believe what the physicians are out there saying to you. Believe what you've trusted us for years. Why change now? Why all of a sudden are we now looking at doctors and saying, I'm not quite sure what you're telling me is true? We have no reason to lie to you. We want you to be safe. We want Barbados to be safe. And we can tell you that all of the information that is out there right now is saying to us that people who are vaccinated are less likely to become critically ill. What that means is that we're going to have less people critically ill and inundating our healthcare systems. It doesn't necessarily stop us at this point from getting the disease, but it becomes more of a general flu. So please, guys, everyone, I recommend you get vaccinated.
So quickly, asymptomatic people, vaccinated people that have COVID, can we keep people at home instead of with a bracelet, instead of overwhelming all of the other sites that will then have to pull the resources from all of the various agencies, the hospital, that is our only major care, to start looking after people who may not necessarily be that sick. You have 501 people scattered around Barbados right now, from Harrison's Point to Black Bungalow, etc. You're obviously going to need nurses. You're going to need doctors. You have to pull them from somewhere, from some pool. So what I'm asking as doctors, asymptomatic people, at what stage do you know that you're asymptomatic, that look, if you haven't got symptoms yet, you ain't getting none. So if that is the case, no, I'm just trying to figure out, is there a timeline so that you can remain, no, you can't.
No, there's none. So
none.
That's the thing, you may be asymptomatic for 3 days until you have symptoms, so you can test positive today, Monday, and remain asymptomatic and develop symptoms on Friday. That can happen. So I mean,
you constantly need that care, that watchful eye of a doctor or a nurse.
What I believe the government is doing, which it's phenomenal that we even have the opportunity to do it, because a lot of other larger countries obviously don't have the skill to do that. And smaller islands such as ours, some of them have chosen not to isolate persons in a facility. They've chosen to allow persons to self-isolate at home. And some of them, it didn't work out quite well, because it's hard for you to, first of all, for you to isolate at home. The recommendation is that that person has a separate bedroom. They don't share a bedroom with anybody. They have a separate bathroom. So that bathroom is theirs and theirs alone. A lot of houses in Barbados don't have that set up. And it then becomes very difficult in tracking tracking persons and keeping and hoping that they do what they're supposed to do, because people are people, and sometimes they will try to skirt the rules.
Okay.
What I would say though, and I just want to touch on something Bandele mentioned, is he spoke about breakthrough infection. So that's a rare event which occurs when somebody has been fully vaccinated, gone through their immunity periods, which is 14 days post their second vaccine, and still end up getting infected with COVID-19. So yes, this happens. It is rare, but it can happen. The good news is that these breakthrough infections generally are asymptomatic, as Bandele said, or only lead to mild illness. And the vaccine still remains highly protective against that person winding up in hospital or actually dying from the infection.
But we still have to
yes, I know
them.
people are.
But we still have
people
to
are chanting about
everybody.
Breakthrough infections and saying, the vaccine doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense me getting the vaccine because look, I know somebody, John Marie, had the vaccine and he still ended up with COVID. It doesn't, yes, you can get breakthrough infections as with any other vaccine. So no vaccine is 100% protective.
Well, there goes my idea to say keep them at home and bracelet them. I really thought that maybe we could to ease easy medication.
That can work. That's an option too.
I would say that is an option, and I'm sure that the Ministry of Health and our leaders are discussing this constantly, and I think there will probably be a point when we have no choice. But certainly it needs to be something that is well thought out and structured in how we do it. It's always easy to say, well, we can just do X or we can just do Y. But I think we need to sit down and have close and considered conversations on how we may do something like this. But I'm sure that those discussions will probably be ongoing at this point in time.
Okay, well, we are more or less out of time. 30 seconds, final word. Dr. Brooks and Dr.
I would like to have one word quickly, and that's to say we were here to talk about chronic non-communicable diseases.
But this is why you have to come back and come back and come back.
Inevitably, we've spoken about something that you cannot ignore. You absolutely can't ignore it. And I would like to wrap up and say that, you need to know what your status is, certainly, where it comes to non-communicable illnesses. If you haven't had your medical, you haven't seen a doctor for a long period of time, I recommend that you do so. And, just get your checkup, know exactly where you stand. And the next step would be to go and get the vaccine if you haven't done so already.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us,
Brooks.
Joanne.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks.
Yes. I would just like to say that the disruptions that we've noticed to NCD care and diagnosis as a result of COVID-19, coupled with the increased exposure to numerous behavioral risk factors like unhealthy diet, increased alcohol use, lack of physical activity, stress driven by the control measures put in place for the COVID-19, all of this has put people with NCDs in a disadvantaged position. And this is why the continuity of care for NCDs, with persons for NCDs, is vitally, vitally important.
Thank you so much, and I will be inviting both of you back if that's okay with you, because you're right. We need to talk more about NCDs, and it has to be an ongoing discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Certainly.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. We'll be back after the break. Thanks very much. I'm Joanne Haigh. This has been Face It and Fix It. Wonderful show. We'll see you again on Monday because Thursday we break for cricket. Thank you so much. God bless.